Peace and blessings, love and light. Love yourself and love your life. I am Baba Haru, also known as Todd Streets, and this is Speak Life. Today we got a special guest, Master Teacher NEB Teharka. Give me a we go. Peace and blessings.
What's going on, my brother?
Oh, sir, as they say in the day, you are the man. I am just a fan. I would cut my hands off if I had yours.
Yeah. Now, if I did the same, we'd be two handless, two handless bobbers.
That's all right, because the power is all in the mind.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I want to tell you, man, thank you for joining me, man, here on Speak Life. We got a mission over here, and the mission is to help our people learn to edify themselves through the power of speech and other modalities. Whether it be spirituality, Islam, Christianity, we want to be able to pull the best practices out of all things. Nile Valley culture, Sumerian culture, uh, you know. So I've really been eager to get you on because of what you deal with. And for those who don't know, this is my dear brother, mentor, NEB Teharka. I couldn't really say enough about this man, but he is a master teacher of the laws of time. And this is, in my perspective, one of the most important fundamental principles that we need to understand in order to aid us in evolving. So, if you could please give a little insight to NEB Taharka, your background, your experience, and then we'd dive into some other things and ease into the laws of time.
Sounds good. Well, it's truly a pleasure to be on here, Baba. And the same sentiments that you said about me, I share about you and this platform, and just looking at the things that you're doing in coaching to really help us be able to break through some of these perceived barriers that we have that impede progress into multiple directions. Mainly, we get hit with health, relationships, and financial aspects of it, or economics. And all of our ideologies are trying to see how we can get some leeway or some free flowing energy in all those areas that move us forward. And so my background is simple. I spent a few years in the military, moved to Atlanta back in 2000, back in 94. I'm talking about 2000. I can't even go back that far.
You about 14 when you moved out there, huh?
I wish. I think I was 21 when I moved to Atlanta and out of the military. Went to college here, and then I got into some different businesses. Started to get it. I did get my degree in accounting and things of that nature. Got into some businesses and really kind of learned how to be self-sufficient through those businesses. Then I went into the consulting world, and I really like consulting because I've always been pretty good. I always had the gift to gab, but I always wanted to give something to people that was meaningful that they could use to the end of time. You know how you can buy things and it just be in your garage collecting dust.
Absolutely.
So I didn't want that. So I kind of really like consulting. And from there, I went and all this time, I was a big student of self-development, right? Then probably about 7 years ago, maybe 8, I said, you know what, there's something missing, right? And I started to go into consciousness. I first joined a very powerful group called Achieving Inner Mastery, AIM. It's a mastermind group with brothers. And this is when I was first learning about Black consciousness, I would call it. Okay. Absolutely. And so those brothers took me under the wing and got me into the game. I said, oh, okay, I see now, right? Then I got into brain balancing with Dr. Jewel Pookrum and did really well with that. Yeah.
Shout out to Dr. Jewel. Yeah. Not to cut your wisdom, but for those in the community who don't know, she is just that. She is an absolute jewel. She is one of the most precious people we have in the Black community, and enough of us have not even begun to access the work and demonstration she's laid down. But please continue.
Yeah, yeah. So I worked extensively with her and learned a lot of things. And see, she really, she's the reason, probably one of the big reasons why I'm here talking to you today about the law of time,
Right.
because just prior to me meeting her and Baba Wanik, Kimi Tahuti Shabazz, I ended up getting into a meditation group with them, and this is when they were talking about this law of time, and I was reading a little bit on it and brain balancing. And so what happened is we moved to another level. Dr. Jewell took a group of people and said, "Hey, we're now gonna, balance our brains, and we're gonna work on this exclusively with people that got balanced brains and that's really focused on this." So a lot of people kind of fell off at that point, and I said, "Man, I want to be in this group." I could see the advanced, how advanced everybody was, and
Mm-hmm.
so after that, I started balancing, and anything with me is a focus. I just discipline, I focus, and it turned out I advanced very quickly in that process,
Mm-hmm.
and I got introduced to this whole concept you hear me talk about called the hollow mind perceiver, and it's really the whole mind perceiving through you is the simple layman
Absolutely.
terms of it. And what is that whole mind? Well, that perception lies in the eye of the beholder, right? So from what I understood, I got so fascinated with this topic,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I was brain balancing that I actually decoded some things I didn't know I decoded. Okay,
Right, right, right. No, absolutely. Them downloads do come when you in.
all those came, and
Mm-hmm.
so in that I got an opportunity to teach it very early on. And within a couple of months of brain balance, and I got a chance to teach this. And I know people were just watching me like, let me see what's going to happen, because people usually don't delve into this area because
Absolutely.
it is very detailed and technical and all
Mm-hmm.
the things that would make people not want to dive into unless it was their life mission.
Absolutely.
And so from there, everything took off. That was 7 years ago. And from there, man, my mind had just kept evolving and evolving, and these concepts kept coming. And so now I see a whole different reality here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so now I'm part of an organization called Mimic, Melanated Immortals Making Evolutionary Changes. And we've taken those concepts, myself, High Priestess, Ma'at, and we took the concepts that helped us evolve with Dr. Jewell and created an organization and said, what if we could create something in an organization where
Mm-hmm.
people could evolve like we did? Because we kind of set ourselves apart from a lot of people. We took it very seriously, everything. And so now you have Melanated Immortals that's been 5 years in existence and really pushing us to continue to help attract people who want to evolve and really get into the integration of what concepts have to be integrated in order to evolve and live out our reality in this matrix.
That's awesome. So look, uh, and you mentioned melanated immortals making evolutionary changes,
Mhm.
or mimic as we know it. And for those of us whom are members of Mimic, we refer to each other as Starkin.
Mhm.
Myself being Starkin 77, Red Crystal Earth Starkin 77.
Mhm.
You being Blue Flame and Blue Storm. I apologize. And can you go into, like, share with the people from your position of mastery, Starkin 77. What does that mean, and how does one get to identify themselves as a Starkin?
Okay, so to make it simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been kind of taught astrology from a 12 constellation format. Even though there's 13 constellations, the base of it we've been taught, and there's great things, the great charting of natal charts and things of that nature. But there is an element that we left out. The element is the spiritual cycle that the Olmec and the Galactic Maya followed. Now,
Mm-hmm.
they followed about 17 different calendrical systems. So
Okay.
their mind was very sophisticated about the cosmos and accessing what I call cosmic memory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before we get to the kin, there is the kin is based on a spiritual cycle of 260 days. So we know 360 is the sphere of consciousness, right? 360 degrees of consciousness is the whole sphere, right? Um, and then we have this 260-day cycle, and that is based on the gestation period from inception to incarnation. So, for whatever reason, we focus more around the earth revolving around the sun than we do our personal orbit revolving around our purpose in getting here.
Absolutely.
In this physical body. So, because of that, it is my, based on my readings and my teachings, that we're on a journey of remembrance. What happened in those 260 days that it took us to get here is roughly the gestation, not exactly, but the whole point is this introduces a spiritual cycle that brings in the law of time. That energy factored by time is art, or in this sense, time is the evolution of consciousness. It's not a mechanical clock or a digital watch. It's not a calendar that doesn't connect us. When we think about the Gregorian calendar, it doesn't connect us to any other cosmic cycles, and without connecting us to the cosmic cycle, except the year cycle. So once a year you connect it, right? But you in disarray the whole year because each month of the calendar is jagged. It's not an even number.
And it is it's a fraud in the essence that 2 of the months in the Gregorian calendar were months added in by man deifying himself, you know. So that in and of itself throws us off of our natural rhythm with the planet, so to speak. How important is that frequency that the planet gives off and us being in tune with it?
Well, it is just as important. If you took any programmable codes out of a computer, the computer wouldn't function the same way. So totality is totality. We don't add nothing, we don't take nothing away from it. But when we reduce it, it becomes something other than totality. So now when we're talking about the importance of being able to factor in this spiritual component, that we really, we talk about the Gregorian calendar, how that's been altered, because it's really a time is money paradigm. It's really designed for capitalism. We have to know that that's what that tool is for, and that tool has its place, but it's not the totality of our existence. It's not our purpose, all right? But it has a mechanical frequency that has a place to support the nature of how things work. So let's talk about from there, this Gregorian cycle. I'm going to talk about these kin, and I'm going to show you how the way to break the Gregorian cycle is from my perspective and how I see it.
Indeed.
So the kin comes from, elements in the galactic tree of life. So we have light. So we have 20 different dynamic frequencies of light. We take that 360 degree circle and divide it 18 degrees each. We get 20 different angles. They're 18 degrees, but they're 20 different frequencies of light. That helps us make the galactic tree of life. And we formed those into archetypes.
Okay.
So there's 20 dynamic frequencies of light that are also 20 different archetypes. And those archetypes, they give us an expression of that dynamic frequency that can help us to remember. You ever heard of saying, I am the way, the truth, and the light. So it's to help us remember the light of consciousness that not only brought us here, but gives us access to this 100+ million years of memory that we're really not tapping into in this reality for the most part. You see what I'm saying?
No,
so
absolutely. I follow you.
So now we got these 20 archetypes or light frequencies, and then we got these 13 stages of energy in motion. Okay. And these energy goes into stages from thoughts turning into things.
Now, does that, not to cut your wisdom, does that correlate to the 13 celestial bodies that you referenced earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 13 is a cosmic number. That's why it gets taken out. If you look in society, you see it gets taken out. They demonize 13, right? 13 Friday the 13th. It's so crazy that they would tell us there's no 13th floor.
That's impossible.
14.
It's impossible.
They don't want us to go on the 13th floor or have any remembrance of 13.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of dichotomies when Pope Gregory the 13th really instituted the Gregorian calendar. It's no accident he was the 13th Pope. So this is a program, this is a mind program for the spread of capitalism and artificial intelligence. And so that's something that we can say that's evolved greatly. Absolutely. The problem is it's evolved at the expense of our mind. Okay. So this spiritual component has to come in. Now, this spiritual component is the frequency of nature. So we know that the artificial frequency is 12 month, 60 hour calendar. Clock, 60-minute clock. All right. So that's the 1260 mechanical frequency. Then we have the 1320 frequency of nature. Mm-hmm. So the truth is there's numbering systems that support each reality. There's an artificial reality, and then there's a natural reality or nature itself, right? And so the decimal mathematical system supports the artificial frequency. Decimal means fraction, so we reduce ourselves to fit into that program. All right.
So what are the ramifications? Not to. Well, what are the ramifications to us living in an artificial reality or engaging with, subconsciously choosing to engage with the artificial reality versus naturally and instinctually engaging with a natural reality? What is the downside of that?
The downside of that is being trapped in your emotions. Okay. And when you have somebody that can create a program that triggers your emotions, good, bad, happy, or sad, then you're under a spell of what I call Simon Says. Because we're immersed in something that we're trapped in 1/10 of our mind. Okay. Scientists say we only use consciously about 10% of our brain power, but nobody's showing us how to quickly get the other 90%. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Why? Because we don't want to deal with somebody using their whole mind. You can't really control that and contain.
Yeah, I got some theories on that too. I for many years, one of my theories is, if we get to 25% of brain capacity output, we potentially looking at levitation. We get to 50, you potentially looking at telekinesis. You get up to 75, 90 range, you potentially looking at the individual being able to break themselves down into particles and transfigurate in the blink of an eye. It's just a theory. I haven't taken any time to do a real dissertation on it, but right. I want to dive in to know specifically at what percentage of brain functionality are we capable of doing what thing?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great thing to do a dissertation on, because in the hollow mind perceiver, that's what I talk about. Okay. How to increase your memory so you can access more of your power as a being, not just your physical power, your spiritual power, and your fifth dimensional power, which is electricity and light. Mm-hmm. And so we have different ways that we communicate with the cosmos through that electricity and light. But I'm going to tell you what breaks the spell is the spiritual cycle, because the way the kin comes in is one of the stages of motion. There's 13 of them, marries one of the dynamic frequencies of light. So the first frequency of light is the primal force. And when it comes together with the magnetic field or stage of motion called purpose, they come together and create kin number one.
Okay.
Now, these two come together and create expressions of the creator. We're talking about expressions of the creator through consciousness that can create. Okay. So now when we multiply 13 stages of this energy and 20 dynamic frequencies of light, we get 260 faces of the creator, which is also 260 kin. So you're kin number 177 out of the 260.
77.
Yep. Are you,
70.
oh, you're 77?
Yeah. 77. Red crystal earth.
So you're the 77. All right.
Yeah.
I'm 239.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The 239th expression. What we find out is that we're connected to all of those expressions in our
Absolutely.
brain when we start accessing our memory.
Mm-hmm.
But we start out opening the key to this vault of memory with our kin number or our key. Right? The kin number is the key to opening up the galactic consciousness to trigger our memory. And now you asked a question earlier about, okay, so what are the ramifications of, only operating in a fraction of our mind or in the artificial world, right? Now there's two, and they're not bad. They're not all bad. Once you're trapped and you realize you're on a journey of remembrance, awareness is the key to change. Now we start truth seeking, right? And then, like we always say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, or teachers. Okay, so the teachers will appear. The question is, will we listen to them? And furthermore, on this journey of remembrance, we really want to listen to ourselves, the power of God in us.
Absolutely.
If we can't do that first, then we don't really understand who we are. We violated know thyself.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure that's the most fundamental principle, but it's been socially removed from religious and spiritual spaces as to where we don't encourage individuals to know thyself. It's like certain mechanisms should be common practice. Growing up in the 80s, 90s, it was commonplace to see a Bible on the table. And the purpose of that was multifold. Like my grandmother kept her Bible open to 91st Psalms, which is a psalm of protection. But having these things laid out in the household connects children to certain aspects of themselves as they evolve and grow up. So certain stuff should be commonplace, like a 28-day calendar, which you haven't gotten to yet, but that should be commonplace in every household.
It should.
Even something as simple as Black's Law's Dictionary should be commonplace in every household, because they manipulating law, and this is the mechanism that they're using to manipulate law. So we should know what's going on in the world we living in. And when we don't know, that's equivalent to, in my opinion, living in the artificial intelligent reality.
Yes. And the thing about artificial intelligence is we marvel at it like it's more sophisticated than our own human technology is. And it still cannot reach the highest point that artificial intelligence can reach is logic and reasoning on the scale of consciousness.
Right.
It can't love, it can't experience bliss and peace, it can't experience, enlightenment. Indeed. With totality of consciousness, right? Or pure consciousness. But it's really interesting that this whole artificial matrix can make us live a life in our emotions, or we break out and we transcend our emotions. And this is what this process that I'm talking about does, the spiritual component that from this perspective helps us transcend our emotions into a more beautiful and peaceful state.
Absolutely.
Ourselves. And then now we can reach the Akasha. We can reach the energy of the mind that allows us to time travel and do all these different things, telekinesis. We actually have a group called the Telepathic Remembrance Group that I started back in December. And we've been practicing, from the Hollow Mind Perceiver, we've been practicing remote viewing, retrocognition, where we time travel back to the past, precognition, where we can foresee what happens in the future, and day-to-day telepathic occurrences. Intentionally, not randomly, like, oh man, the thought came to my head, being more intentional with it. So when we, and brother, this is, I learned that some people have the different variants of the gift, but from my studies and what I've been teaching all these years, I've now figured out how to teach it as a skill. That means if someone practices the steps, they can become very skilled.
Level up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to say this. There's another side of the artificial intelligence that's very good. It is a very good place to evoke your ability to move beyond it, to exercise your fullest power. You can't exercise your fullest powers in a vacuum.
Absolutely.
9 times out of 10. You need to be put in a state or where you're polarized. And now I won't say it always has to be a fight or flight, but when you realize that, wait a minute, man, I need to move beyond this program.
Well,
and
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because AI, and look, all things in divine order, and this being a purpose-driven existence, everything has its place in existence. AI challenges us to rethink how we think in a lot of ways. For example, you can go to AI and you can create artwork that is unmatched by the common artist.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can create writings and bodies of work in your individual language, even utilizing and leveraging AI. So it pushes one to have to say, okay, well, AI is going to make this thing obsolete. So what's the next thing? It forces you to create. It forces you to rethink what reality actually is. And I got a theory about artificial intelligence. I think we undermine how many things are actually artificial intelligence. A drinking glass is artificial intelligence. A spoon is artificial intelligence. Shoes are artificial intelligence. And if we are not intentional, as you were mentioning earlier, then we allow AI to push us further and further and further and further away from a natural state of being, which is further and further and further and further away from oneness with divine source.
I say.
The irony of that is that was all the purpose to begin with.
Right.
You know, we were deliberate because all things in divine order, and source can manifest reality however source chooses to manifest reality, and source chooses to manifest reality in such a way that we're challenged by being pushed further or further away from oneness to be driven back into divine oneness.
Absolutely. That's the hope. That's the journey of remembrance. That we're here in a state of amnesia, and nobody can tell me that we got 100 million years of memory and we're using it all, or we need it to for the basic needs and just to travel the world. I mean, we have intelligence that's connected to the earth. And if we understand the earth is in a pole shift, people hear me say this all the time. We're shifting from the information age into the telepathic age. So it requires you to go further into your mind. The mind and the brain are different. The brain is the instrument that processes the consciousness. All right. So you need neurons to do that. You need to cast your neural net. All right. Into the field of consciousness and bring into it what's in remembrance so that you can go carry out these functions on the gravitational plane, the earth. And so as we discover this for ourselves, life starts to get a lot more simpler, because I teach from the perspective of self-acceptance. Now, some people say self-acceptance where you just accept things as the way they are. Well, that's not the view that I am. I look at self-acceptance as I am the source and the creator of my experience.
Absolutely.
So now that takes a lot of guesswork out of it. If something is showing up in your reality that you don't like, then you can change it.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the levels of accountability that are necessary for one to step into self-acceptance or step into that innate power that lies within all of us.
Well, if we're going to talk about that, we got to talk about past life karmas. So in that acceptance, I have to say that I'm teach from a perspective like this, that we chose our parents, we chose our life experiences based on our past life karma.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see a nice person catching hell or sick, they may be repaying back a karmic debt, and they have to remember how to use their memory and their powers to overcome that. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that they can now teach that to the people, other sentient beings on the planet. And so now when we go from there to accountability, now you got to be accountable for what you even came here for. You're not here by happenstance. I was reading something, Baba, and it was so important that for me to see this, that there's more etheric beings, invisible spirits, trying to incarnate with a body than people who had a body. To
Absolutely.
be able to, it takes a highly conscious being to be able to manifest a body for a particular purpose. And so
Mm-hmm.
we got two things working. We got one using energy to build artificial intelligence, and you got another purpose for you to realize your way back to the source of
Absolutely.
creation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So taking personal accountability means we got to take accountability for when we have pride, when we deny God, the power of God in us, to allow us to see deeper into this memory to overcome or provide a spiritual solution to every problem.
Mm-hmm.
Anger, we got to be responsible for our anger, our level of patience. Now, I talk about a lot 5 virtues:
Mm-hmm.
remembrance, discipline, exertion, patience, and compassion. Because once you become aware of all this stuff and you see someone else isn't quite that far into their memory where they can execute like you, we show them the way, we show them compassion, and oftentimes we'll be met with resistance.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Most.
compassionate ethic, the compassionate one's ethic is the unloved lover. They love people, but they don't receive it back immediately
Absolutely.
like that because someone's showing them a pathway that
Mm-hmm.
they're not ready for, or they don't think they're resisting right at that
And
moment.
that's a journey in and of itself for the compassionate one to realize that it, as noble as it is to share higher level principles, everything is not for everybody, and timing is everything because every individual has their own individual journey that they must travel in order to get to the expected or potential in best end result in terms of receiving from this experience.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that we here in many incarnations,
Mm-hmm.
and what happens is that we continue to make our ascension
Mm-hmm.
through each one, and it's a progression. But
Mm-hmm.
when we really get it, now we know, and it's like our consciousness can move from the human body,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I heard you say, for example, everything's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Every non-thing's not for everybody. But I look at us as three different parts: the
Mm-hmm.
body temple, the spirit, and this akashic energy we call electricity and light that really radiates through our chakras, our heart being the core of
Mm-hmm.
it, right? And so we only operate in,
Kundalini.
yeah, exactly. We only operate in the body. We're programmed to only operate in a small portion of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get glimpses of this spirit, and everything with the spirit is kind of out there. Not everything, but this is what we're taught for the most part. Everything dealing with this Akashic energy is so far fetched. It's way out there in space somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're able to say, well, all of those mediums are operating within me, now how can it help me circumnavigate this experience?
Mm-hmm.
When we start asking questions like that, we're going to get answers. But the key is, can we follow the instructions? This is where discipline comes in. Can we follow the instructions of the divine? Can we follow the instructions that help us transcend our emotions into a more beautiful space and state?
I would argue absolutely we can. I think it's of the utmost importance that we understand the purpose of emotions. And I don't believe we ever had this conversation. But
Mhm.
if when the individual comes to know the divine purpose behind emotions, then the individual is able to take more control in the now when those what we call feelings arise. When a thing makes the individual angry, it's like I'm angry, and typically we've been trained to be responsive.
Mm-hmm.
If we learn to take a step back when we feel I'm angry or feel anxiety, then we'll actually realize, hey, something just triggered something in me to put me in an unnatural, uncomfortable state of being.
I say.
So, what I can do now is I can take that feeling and recognize this is not the way I choose to feel. This is not the way that feels most natural to me. So now I have the ability to respond and say, what can I do so I never feel that thing again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And on the adverse, when something is delightful, pleasurable to you, you
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to say, hey, how can I re-engage to feel that again?
Yeah.
So it's, to me, it's a simple premise, but
Psychology. Mm-hmm.
most of us go into that space of it is what it is, or go back into that space of stripping ourselves from our power.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, instead of standing in our power, saying, "Hey, I do have the ability to do X, Y, and Z," but now it takes action. You know,
Mhm.
and I think like you remember The Secret.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's funny because one of the most important principles I think they left out of The Secret, and it's a principle that we don't hear about spoke in the form of a principle, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the law of action.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to do the work.
Yeah. The personal power. Yep.
You have to do the work. Nothing is going to come without doing the work, and sometimes doing the work is not pretty, but as the old folks used to say, anything worth having is worth working for, and nothing worth having comes without sacrifice. So
Yeah.
that's what the sacrifice looks like, and through that lens you got to do the work. But so as it pertains to kin numbers,
Yeah.
as
That's
it
the
pertains
thing.
to kin numbers,
Yeah.
yeah, because I really want people to understand the power of a kin number. Do you care to share with the people, if you would, your the expression in your kin number, and if you have it on the top of your mind, the expression in my kin number 77.
Sure. Yeah, so it's really cool. Now we base these cycles, so you know, there's always an origin based on the cycles of Sirius A revolving around Sirius B. And
Mm-hmm.
anytime we see movement in the in the cosmos, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about consciousness moving and communicating, just like our neurons or cells or
Absolutely.
anything else. Okay, so it's no different, really. Um, and so when we follow these cycles, we said there's 260 kin, right? Now, these also, I want to make sure that this is clear. We look at these as 260 expressions of the Creator that
Mm-hmm.
help us on our divine mission. And this gives
Mm-hmm.
us a component of spirituality
Mm-hmm.
to equip us to transcend those emotions. Again, we need discipline sometimes to do it. What you just described was discipline. You stop. And then there's a psychological component as well. Let's get into the psychology of the kin number, right? So the kin, galactic kin, means that we came from galactic consciousness. So just think about it. If we come from galactic consciousness and we come into a planet, we're coming with a divine purpose to help the planet. Because the galaxy, to have galactic consciousness, we need to know and understand what's going on in the solar system. What happened with the planet that exploded? What happened with this other kind of stuff? Now, we don't directly need to know that right now, but something happened and we were part of that. And now we came into the body of this. Now, in the kin, it takes about 260 days to come into the physical body. All right. Also, it takes about 260 days for farming and different things like that. So these cycles are synonymous across the board.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is that when from inception, you now are going through these processes and through these different kin experience. We call them plasma because we're talking about energy. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you get to your kin or close to it, you start making contractions. I'm going to make my contract on this kin to come out with this galactic purpose onto
Mm-hmm.
this planetary experience. Okay, that's how you want to look at it. So
Okay.
mine is kin 239. So whenever I was, conceived, I may have been conceived on 240, and then I went through all the kin. I experienced all the kin
Mm-hmm.
energetically, and then I came back around to 239 and said, "This is where I'm going to come out now." What is each kin has an affirmation,
Okay.
right? And so my affirmation for kin 239, number one, the name of it is the blue overtone storms. A lot of people see I have lightning and stuff in my
Mm-hmm.
background because I'm exemplifying some of the attributes of the storm. The storm deals with heavy transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So, my affirmation says I empower in order to catalyze. Now, when we talk about purpose, this is the perspective I like to talk about purpose. I don't think purpose is really a job. It could be, but I think jobs and businesses and ministries are vehicles to exemplify purpose, to express purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I can empower and catalyze anywhere. I could be a doctor and do that. I could be a teacher. I could be a minister and do that. I could be I could pick up garbage and be, a garbage truck driver and do it. It doesn't matter. The key is, what am I empowering and what am
Absolutely.
I catalyzing? There's a purpose statement right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
My next line in my affirmation is commanding energy. Okay. So I know we're all energetic people or beings, but I'm really catalytic in my energetic approach to things.
Mm-hmm.
I stir things up. So therefore, it can't be out of my control. I got to be able to command through divine order how things need to work. All right. So I command energy, and I have to be responsible for my commands, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, I seal the matrix of self-generation. That's self-love,
Mm-hmm.
with the overtone tone of radiance. So I walk with a atmosphere of radiance, enthusiasm, passion, those kind of things. And then I'm guided by accomplishment, the power of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm a very results driven person. So I can take those statements and I can apply them
Mm-hmm.
every place in my life, no matter what profession, business, no matter what project or program I'm on. I can bring that energy to the table. So you take your purpose with you everywhere you go to these different.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's mine, right? 239th expression. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds cool, but they all are cool in their own way, right? And so now we come in with a different kind of atmosphere
Mm-hmm.
when we're walking around here. That if you came here with galactic consciousness, you're here for all the species on the planet. And this is
Absolutely.
how nature and the power of synchronicity works on your behold and
Mm-hmm.
honors you as a god on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know that if you haven't reduced yourself, a lot of us has reduced ourselves. This artificial matrix does a good job of showing us how to go through reductionism and objectify things, objectify spirit, and so now we can't be as effective, right?
Absolutely.
All right. In terms of kin number 77, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's powerful as well. That's the crystal earth. Now,
Mm-hmm.
things that crystallize are permanent. Now
Mm-hmm.
the earth, so you did the same thing. It may have been kin number 79 when you were conceived. That's the magnetic storm, or 78. That
Mm-hmm.
is the cosmic mirror. And
Mm-hmm.
then you went through all 260 till you came back around to 77 and said, I'm gonna start making contractions right here because this is where I'm gonna make my contract to bring my purpose through the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now,
And it's and look, not to cut your wisdom, right?
yeah.
But it's so powerful, right? Because we taught that a lot of these different modalities and things are not of God, and
Mhm.
if God didn't want us to have these things that we could use to our benefit, he would have never gave these things to us, because anything can be weaponized in any capacity.
Mhm.
So with that being said, when I first got my star can and I read it and I said, I dedicate in order to evolve.
Right.
I said, what? I say that's me.
That's what you do.
Like I can't even deal with a thing if I can't see some form of self ascension going through the process,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
utilizing universalizing synchronicity. I'm like, that is me. I can sit down in a room with a Christian, a Catholic, a Muslim, a Moabite, a Moor, and I can show them how it is synchronicity in all they do, and I do it in a natural, free flowing way. Like, I don't necessarily have to have a depth knowledge
Yeah.
of things. I can take surface layer and be
Mhm.
able to synchronize it on a grander scale. I seal the matrix of navigation with the crystal tone of cooperation. I mean, it speaks itself. I am guided by the power of universal water. I'm a Pisces Aquarius mix. In
Mhm.
terms of astrology, I'm
Yeah.
born on the cusp, but I'm Pisces Aquarius.
Right. Right. Right.
And and from that lens, part of my gift is that, if for those who don't know, we just came recently into the age of Aquarius, as they call it. Well, I was connected to the past age that we came out of, as well as this age that we're coming into.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much I'll spend half of my life in the age of Pisces, and I'll spend roughly half of my life in the age of Aquarius. So it's just so important to be able to identify yourself with a purpose and higher principles. And that's why I keep on bringing up StarCan, because it absolutely gives the individual a purpose, as well as gives you a glimpse into the essence of how creator is
Mm-hmm.
working through you,
Absolutely.
specifically you. And when we understand that, it makes things make more sense in terms of how to make decisions and how to navigate forward in that new found power. And I think that's the most important benefit of the Star Kin number, is the power that is identified in you, the individual that comes forth.
Yeah. Yeah. That is powerful.
So if it's one principle out of the law of time that you had to share with everyone, what would it be?
Follow the synchronicities. See, the thing is that we follow the programs now because
Mm,
that's what we're conditioned to do. Our subconscious mind is conditioned with behaviors and patterns and shame, everything that we repress thoughts and to
mm,
our subconscious mind, and we keep living those patterns. And so to break patterns, we need to follow dynamic cycles, or I say cosmic cycles.
mm,
And so when you don't know the cosmic cycles, you got to follow the synchronicities. Now, most of us don't have that primal trust
mm,
to follow our heart. We're afraid because we've been disappointed before.
mm.
So if we've been taught to trust outside of ourselves before we can trust ourselves. But now we don't even trust ourselves. So we in quite an emotional state if we can't trust ourselves, because now we operating in a severe state of confusion with a lot of complexes. So the number one thing, man, is follow the synchronicities. And to know that time is the evolution of consciousness. So if you take evolve and spell it, take the four letters and spell it backwards, it's love. So you got to love consciousness to evolve consciousness.
Mm.
And so this is kind of what the kin numbers do. They kind of bring us into remembrance. They kind of trigger our memory so that we can see a more expanded consciousness and use it to help guide us, because we all have the answers inside of us. One other thing, if I may say something about the 13 moon calendar.
Please.
Very important that we have a cosmology and we have things to replace whatever we are debunking as something that's not good for us.
Mm.
So if we're going to, divert from we were Christian to a Muslim now, or now we need to be able to do that in the appropriate way, right? But if we're going to go from a Christian to nothing, we're going to have a serious void there. So you always have to have some practices and some things to fill that void. Otherwise, your mind will go astray. So don't just try to say, if you think what I'm saying is making sense, I want to study that, forget this other stuff. No, look for the synchronicities in what you've been studying. That's why you universalize the synchronicities, because you find the synchronicities in everything.
Absolutely.
And you're able to unify it and get cooperation from all different types of people, from all different types of backgrounds.
Yeah, it's all about the principles. And you know what? I'm about to say something, and I'm not saying it in an attempt to be offensive to some of our brethren and sistren on the planet, right? But when certain powers came into being on this planet, they did their best to erase previous understandings, erase what the former or the more natural knowledge of self was. They got rid of antiquitous principles that had been governing civilization for so long that we were able to have a Nile Valley civilization that spanned for over 10,000 years. And if you include Sumer and Atlantis and so forth and so on, we probably would go back a 500,000 years,
At least,
literally speaking. But in take the book burning of Alexandria, for example. You know, enemies of humanity ransacked villages, took all of their knowledge and information, kept it away from the people for generations and generations and generations, used it for themselves, but didn't have the innate ability to dissect and discern the information in totality. So it came back to humanity in fragments, as Professor James Smalls would say. We got back fragments of a more complete picture. And I just want the listeners to understand how important it is to be able to find those synchronicities, because how we got all of these different philosophies and doctrines and ideologies comes from us trying to put the puzzle back together. And as we hold these different things up against each other, they're actually not as different as they seem. They may have been articulated or disseminated in a different dialect, or they may have come up in a different geographical space and time or region. So aspects of it are going to look different because those aspects are more palatable for the people that it was created or given to. You know what I mean? So back to the law of time. We have this 28-day calendar. Can you explain the 28-day calendar and where it comes from? And even to my knowledge, aren't they still using 28-day calendar in Ethiopia? And it's not the same day in Ethiopia as it is. in America?
I'm not sure if they use it in Ethiopia. I think they use the Holton or something in Ethiopia. It is a different variation. Uh,
Okay.
the what we're doing with the 28-day calendar is following the lunation cycles, and so they measure the lunation cycles a couple different ways, but the mean average of these two different ways they measured it is 28 days. So now if you take 365 and divide it by 28, you get 13 moons, not 12 months. All right. So that's important. Now, anything that I talk about, Baba, I got to be able to locate it in the body. So
Mm-hmm.
immediately we turn the attention to the female avatar who is supposed to have a menstruation cycle every 28 days. So there's a direct correlation to what that lunation cycle is doing to the water levels on the planet or the tide levels and all that kind of stuff. And consciousness, all that is consciousness that's interacting with us in our experience on the planet. So that's where it comes from. Uh, and the Olmecs and the Mayans, Galactic Mayans, they were able to follow a lot of these different calendars. So this 260-day cycle keeps repeating itself. So we know 260, right? And 365, there's 105 days left. Well, you got to start the count back over with the 260, and these two cycles synchronize.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates something called Jose Arguelles. He created something called he synchronized the calendars to call it the dream spell. And that's a very important position because it created a bridge. No matter what calendar people were coming from, they could synchronize those calendars, unwind the clock, and open up this cosmic memory and go beyond where they've been. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah.
the 28-day cycle is one of the first cosmic cycles to really tap into.
Okay.
And that's the moon revolving around the earth. Now you got your consciousness revolving through this 260-day process, and then you got what's going on in the lunation cycle to every
Mm-hmm.
28 days, and then you got the solar cycle, which is every 365. They all are moving together and synchronizing
Mm-hmm.
consciousness so that you can become aware of different phenomena and
Mm-hmm.
allow that to guide you to be your spiritual and emotional guidance system on how you circumnavigate the planet. But this 28-day cycle is important because why would we follow something that's 12 cycles when we know that there's 13 cycles and it's linked to the female reproductive system? You know, the female energy has really been depleted in a lot of ways, tried to remove, and the creativity element and the nurturance of that has definitely been skewed quite a bit through,
Mm-hmm.
I would call, patriarchy. But when you bring that element in, it makes everything more powerful because now when you're aligned with these cycles, the abundant energy flows through these channels and we all expand, elevate, and evolve much more into this 100 plus million years of memory that we're not using.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're able to perceive from the memory we just remembered versus the program and the fractional piece of our logical mind that we're using. It's a big difference. And
Mm-hmm.
so that 13 moon calendar is key to breaking the spell of the Gregorian calendar that really is a fallacious calendar as it relates to cosmic memory and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, 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 absolutely. And you keep referencing and you even used the phrase once, the Akash, right?
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew it.
When you said it the first time, I've been sitting on it for 10 minutes already. So, you know, I describe the Akash in layman's terms as the hard drive of all of existence,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Soul memories. Mm-hmm.
And it it is where everything exists all at once. Past, present, future exist all at once. And the only other place I can think of where the past, present, and future exist all at once is within us. So if we are to actually tap into the Akash, better yet, let me ask you this. How could one use the laws of time uh, 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 to effectively tap into the Akashic record? Like, what happens through interfacing with the laws of time that allows one to be able to tap into the Akashic records?
Well, first, with the law of time is really the law of nature, the law of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And nature is powered by synchronicity. That's why
Mm-hmm.
we say, you ask me one thing, follow the synchronicity. You got to trust it because it might not look like how you think it should look. But the
Mm-hmm.
synchronicities are what they are. They're more than, there are two or more things that apparently are working together for something unified or for one purpose. They seem to be non-related, but they're more related than we think. But to the mind's eye, this is a synchronicity. Okay, I can't understand it. I can't explain it, but I'm gonna follow it. Now, sometimes that's not easy to do, right? So once you understand nature and the power of nature, then you start to see yourself different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I want to tell you is that there's the artificial intelligence and then there's absolute intelligence. So what you just described is what I call the absolute. The past and the future have already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Infinity, everything is involved in this. But the absolute is, when we talk about an absolute truth, it can be nothing but that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now we want to operate from that intelligence, and that's where the Akashic energy is coming from the absolute. And so
Absolutely.
that can't be denied. So the way you get into that is you have to start taking nature and see, wait a minute, in terms of nature, how do I incorporate my mind with nature? How do I unify the two? Well, they already are unified. We just hadn't become aware of it yet. This is part of the memory, right? Because when they become memory, when you memorize it, or it becomes you where you can remember it, put it back together.
Mm-hmm.
Now you realize that your mind, you have access to the whole mind, which includes all memory and all nature. This is the hollow mind perceiver, the whole mind perceiving, and
Mm-hmm.
you're linked into that consciousness. So through the hollow mind perceiver, you can access. You got to get to the law of time first and understand how that works inside and outside of you. Then you start to accessing part of your mind that you didn't before, which takes you into the Akashic energy or the Akashic register, takes you into the absolute mind. And then now you can go into the soul memories from seeing that your mind is the whole field of consciousness in the cosmos. Your mind ain't just this brain with your auric field. That you have access to all of it. And I'll tell you this, we just started our 17th consecutive semester on Saturday. And I was talking on one of the classes that this energy travels through plasma.
Mm-hmm.
Plasma in the universe. There's a plasma universe model on how everything came together through the harmonics. Then this plasma was created through this consciousness. But we got plasma in our blood. We got plasma in our corpus callosum that has all the code that synchronizes the left hemisphere from the right hemisphere of the brain. We got plasma in our cerebral spinal fluid. They got plasma banks here in these different facilities, not just blood banks. So that made me start studying, okay, what is that for? And why is this plasma so important? Right? Because to change the blood quality, you got to receive some different codes, right? To operate through your plasma in your mind, and that travels throughout the body so that you now can upgrade the body into where the mind is. But most of us don't do it. Most of us stay in our mind. We don't even want to have this human experience because the mind experience is so beautiful.
Absolutely.
If we can just go a step further and say, but what if I can sync up this body with the mind programs that I'm receiving. And
mm,
that means I could be God on earth. That means the things that I'm doing in my mind, I can do on the planet. And if
mm.
it's for the good of all the species, then I become a very important piece to this whole this whole evolutionary process the earth is going through and unfolding right now as we speak.
Yeah, that's the divine balance that the Rosicrucianists speak of. That is the concept of the Father and I are one, intertwined by the Holy Spirit that Christianity speaks of. That is the process of the experience moving towards ascension in in the priesthood of Nile Valley culture. It it is the basis for the construction of all things constructed is the trilateral, the physical, the mental, the spiritual. They all must come together, and I believe our what do we say? Our emotional intelligence is fractured by those things not being in proper alignment.
Absolutely. That's an equilateral triangle. We call it the three holons.
Mm-hmm.
And what I talk about. And what I love about what I talk about, and my perspective is I work off of perspectives. I don't come
Absolutely.
from an absolute truth. Okay. However, I
Mm-hmm.
come from a perspective that can lead you to the absolute truth,
Absolutely.
or you can lead yourself to the absolute truth. I can look at every perspective, just like you did, whether it's a Christianity perspective, Islam, different perspectives, and I can identify the synchronicities in that to help me evolve. You see what I'm saying? So that's just where I am in my consciousness, and I encourage other people to look at perspective so they can judge not. Right, the judgment is what holds our heart heavy, and then it's the heart that blocks the mind
Absolutely.
from changing. You want to change your mind, you need to have a change of heart, because it's the heart that's going to that can
Absolutely.
really create the blockages and impede progress. So, brother, that's what's up. That's where we got to get to. And I've
Mm.
dedicated my life to empower people through this process, because in going through my different teachings, I just did not. There was too many things going unanswered, and now I can say, well, from this perspective, if somebody asks me, this is what is expressed. From this perspective, this is what is expressed. So now we need to figure out what perspective is going to work for where your consciousness is now. At certain states of consciousness, certain things don't exist. You're not a
Absolutely.
candidate for certain, you're not available for certain things.
Mm.
Okay. And so we need to know what those states are, because as we continue to elevate, we're not available for a lot of the shenanigans. We're focusing our energy on the planet itself, and being
Absolutely.
able to continue to feed all of the inhabitants that's in the biosphere.
Mm.
This whole sphere can evolve into the next stage. And that's why I say we're moving from the humanity, as the poles shift through the earth since 2012 or thereabout. We're moving from information into telepathic age of knowing. And
And that's
so, and us being able to do that is going to uh, allow us to be a version of this human that we haven't been in a long time on this planet. So this is powerful, man. And anybody who's further interested or intrigued, they're welcome to email me or check out our website. We are in class. We just started classes, so that people hear this, soon enough. We'll still be enrolling until about Friday. Friday will be the very last day that we'll take people. But it is enlightening to get this. And I just want to say this other thing. It's not just in the past, I've gotten knowledge and I could talk about it because I
mm.
understand concepts. I got critical thinking skills.
Mm.
When things really kicked up for me is when
Mm.
I was able to integrate it. So now I'm teaching from an integrative perspective.
Mm.
How you practice it and make it second nature in your day-to-day life is very key for you to experience what I'm talking about versus understand the concept of what I'm talking about.
Application of knowledge begots wisdom, and in order to reach the masses, information has to be practical. With
Yes.
that being said, the grind, divine gratitude for you for sharing your presence and for being my first guest on the podcast in this cycle of 365. I definitely appreciate that. And honestly, I've had many opportunities to sit down with some other guests, and I really wanted this first episode to set the tone
Okay.
because everything that I do is purposeful and intentional. My goal is to create better spaces and new infrastructures because we can see that this artificial world is perishing right before our eyes.
I say.
And some of us are so locked into the matrix as they call it that we're allowing ourselves to perish with it. And for those of us who understand that purpose comes with the ideal of service, and that stems from the individual value. I can only do things that are serviceable for humanity at large.
Mhm.
So again, I appreciate you, beloved brother. We can sit down and we can chop it up when we have time again. But I really, really hope the people listening, can you please give them the mimic information so they can reach out to you?
Yeah, yeah. So you can go to our website, www.melanatedimmortals.com. You can also email me at bluestorm@melanatedimmortals.com. And on IG and Facebook and TikTok, I'm on there as NEB underscore Teharka, Teharka. And if you go into any of those places, you'll see me and you can get the videos, and then you can message me that way too. But if it really, if it's intriguing to you,
Mhm.
it's calling you to go into a deeper study, definitely reach out to me because there's some things I can point you into to help you on your journey.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much, dear brother, for your presence. This has one thing before you go.
Okay.
I have a segment. The last segment is typically where I ask the guests, what does the ideal of Speak Life mean to you? Being that this is Speak Life, the podcast,
Yes.
I like for my guests to articulate what the ideal of Speak Life means to them, if
Mhm.
you would, please.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's real easy to figure out when you speak death what speak life means. And so when we talking about speaking life, we're talking about living to our fullest potential, speaking about living to our fullest potential, and not in a
Mhm.
fractional 1/10. But now we took in those borders off, and now we talking about into infinitum. Speak life into infinitum. That means we don't have no limits in terms of what kind of life we can speak and we can create for ourselves and inspire others to do as well. So I love what you're doing. Just you asking me questions spoke life into me and made me speak life into the listeners. And then we all share in the same in the connectedness of all of it together. And then everything is better now because of you, brother, having this platform.
Oh man, divine gratitude, brother. I'm telling you, I couldn't thank you enough. I appreciate your demonstration so much. Man, I know the people appreciate you. We got to keep on doing the work.
Yes.
That was the divine wisdom of NEB Teharka. I am Todd Streets, divinely known as Baba Haru Utu Ogun. This is Speak Life. More love, more life, more power. Always the more, nevertheless. Peace and blessings, everybody.
Peace.